But when money's really, really tight, the climate policy feels just less urgent in the moment, right?
and isn't in the language of the everyday person.
We need to work toward, a better future climate wise. And people are just like, I don't have the capacity to participate in this.
Welcome to the Spin Nation podcast. Today, we're going to environmental and green narratives in Canada. We found that the narrative around green and environmentalism and climate just was not as strong as it used to be.
What I hear consistently is the rising cost of living. Grocery prices, heating, cost of gas is what people are concerned about. I don't think that people don't care about the environment, but when money's really, really tight, climate policy feels just less urgent in the moment, right? We need to take these actions for the future, and that's true, but it's hard when you're in survival mode. So I think that tying that message in will help it resonate with people and help people think more about it for the future.
Is that why you think, for example, like EVs haven't been adopted as readily here as they have in other countries because it's just seen as an additional expense?
Absolutely. I grew up in a small town, and I don't know anyone who has the amount of money that it costs to buy like a Tesla, for example. I know there are other options, but it's a big upfront cost for a lot of people who just don't have it.
So I think there was a significant shift in narrative and it became less of a priority somewhere. And my suspicion is that after COP26, and we kind of, okay, now it's time for the policy people, the regulators to take this file and then turn this momentum into action. And I think this is where we lost the momentum. It became very much a regulatory conversation where people were talking about, okay, how do we deal with scope 2 emissions, scope 3 emissions? Very wonky conversation and isn't in the language of the everyday person. And that's where the momentum was lost.
Yeah, I also think we need to take into consideration, what's happened in the last 5 to 6 years with, the pandemic and exhaustion. We saw the Russian-Ukrainian war, rising inflation. We were overwhelmed by the amount of things happening in the world. And so when we're coming to people saying these are the things that we need to do to work toward, a better future climate wise, it's too much. And people are just like, I don't have the capacity to participate in this. I think a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes, and they don't want to necessarily participate in conversations where they can be the subject to criticism if they don't know.
Hmm. And I take your point. If we go back to the world of traditional media, you selected your gatekeeper, whether it was the Toronto Star or the National Post, and that helps filter out and at least guide you to a certain set of values that you've agreed and shared, and that reduced the decision load, and that's disappeared, especially in the last few years. You get a slew of influencers screaming on your Instagram or your TikTok saying there's this new research, that new research, and you don't quite know who to trust anymore.
Exactly, exactly. And, algorithms are good, but so they also protect us from hearing other perspectives, right? I think it's important to be curious about what happens outside of our own algorithms.
Do you think that Trudeau and now we have Carney, do you think they missed the opportunity? So obviously Trudeau had much more green and climate forward policies. And now the sentiment has shifted. Do you think if the government had been better at what you're saying, where if you're taking away jobs and opportunities from oil, you need to replace it with something else? And to my mind, they didn't replace it. They talked about green tech in these big, vague terms, but nothing ever materialized. They never really gave any options to people. And now it's become, we need to invest in pipelines again.
Yeah, and I think that it was a missed opportunity. And the Greens have been talking about this for at least 10 years, which was investing in retraining people for renewable energy, for those jobs to transition them. People are talking more about, pipelines. It's because in last February, Trump, he increased the tariffs. So I think that the supporters of the pipelines, they understand that it veers us away from relying on the US. We can make deals with other partners. And I think it's going to ebb and flow, the investment in pipelines, or the depending on what's happening again in the world. But we also need to recognize that there are pros and cons to it.
And I think there's a narrative as well. I was reading that Alberta has tripled its output, but the actual number of jobs related to oil and gas is actually down by a couple digits. So it's not necessarily always build pipelines or build oil wells, and the jobs will follow.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's yes, we will make money, but at what cost, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think there's a narrative as well. Like everyone, whichever side of the spectrum you sit on, I think everyone wants nice green parks and clean air and fewer chemicals in the air and in the food they consume. So it might be a simpler messaging that aligns as something that makes a difference in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, the messaging needs to be how all of these forward climate policies can help them, right? I think, and no, I think linking those things when you're talking to people and having those one-on-one conversations, it's like, yeah, I hear you. I'm feeling these effects as well. I understand your concerns, and here is how all of these things are related. And it doesn't sound to me like you're against these things. What it sounds like is you are for these things, and it just is a matter of how they are adopted and how they are perceived.
All right. Well, this has been so great. Oh, I'm really happy that you came on to chat with us today, Randy. We, of course, hope to see you sitting in the ledge at some point in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.